During these times of upheaval, we can easily get lost in the overwhelming sea of information, trying to make sense of what is going on and how to navigate our lives. There's much uncertainty, doubt, and fear. Or we can also easily check out and distract ourselves with soul-numbing behaviors and addictions, especially in our digitized world. Sometimes it's important to zoom out and look beyond our personal interests, fears and worries, and even hopes and dreams, and look at the bigger picture the best we can. Hello, my name is Bernhard Gunther. I'm a writer, psycho-spiritual coach, and host of the Cosmic Matrix podcast. I've been writing and producing content about spirituality, psychology, shamanism, esotericism, the occult and hyperdimensional realities, and much more for over 20 years. You can find out more about my work on my website, veilofreality.com. We have to understand that there's something much bigger happening in the world currently, way beyond what we see on a 3D level. The mind can grasp it, no matter how much you try to figure it out by trying to stay updated through the alternative media or even mainstream news. There's a great opportunity at this moment in history, and there's a huge spiritual lesson for humanity occurring right now. Yet, there's no guarantee. This opportunity for alchemical transformation and the true awakening can only be taken if you rise to the occasion and engage in the greater work. For the outside will always reflect the inside. The mud and forces of the unconscious and the underworld are rising up. All that we have suppressed, our fears, wounds and traumas are coming to the surface, begging to be integrated, healed and transmuted into wholeness, so we can truly ascend to higher levels of being, transforming ourselves and the world as embodied frequency anchors. The supramental consciousness of the divine is also descending. It is stirring up all the shadows revealed by the light. This evolutionary journey of consciousness is a long process spanning over lifetimes, but there are key junctures, like right now, and the choices we make during this time will have tremendous effects on the future. So do not take this time lightly and do not waste it with trivial stuff. Remember, the moment you're born, you live on borrowed time. Disillusionment, as we are faced with the parts of ourselves we try to avoid, is part of the process. It is a necessary and in fact positive process, for disillusionment implies to become free from illusion. But the truth is most often not what our little eye wants or likes to see within ourselves and in the world. This collective dark night of the soul is also a necessary process, and the only way out is in and through. Therefore, all lies need to be revealed within yourself and in the world. No one is excluded from this process, and while everyone is at a different level of being with different lessons to integrate, no steps can be skipped eventually. The process of the evolution of consciousness entails making the darkness conscious, as this expansion encompasses a widening on all levels as we become aware of all. There's no ascending spiritually without descending below and spiritualizing matter and our bodies. It's an internal and external process, as they are one and the same. The New Age, pop spiritual teachings, and dogmatic religions have distorted what this process is all about. The awakening process is not a gradual linear road up towards more love and bliss, nor is there heaven awaiting in the afterlife, being judged by some dogmatic external God. No, the path towards awakening spirals up, down, in and out, and expanding on all levels and bringing up everything, for everything needs to be transmuted. Anything that is asleep within us, meaning unconscious, will be put under the spotlight of truth. As Carl Jung said, the tree that reaches to heaven must have its roots in hell. Or in Sri Aurobindo's words, metaphorically speaking, no one can reach heaven who has not passed through hell. So don't just wait for a great awakening without being willing to face your own stuff as well. Shadow work is the name of the game during these end times. Thus, the divine will be testing our sincerity, humility, and integrity as we face ourselves during these end times. And we haven't seen anything yet. This alchemical transformation will also give birth to new opportunities, quantum leaps in creativity and true abundance beyond just materially. But it must be rooted in these concepts of integrity and sincerity. We are called to rebuild this world upon a spiritual foundation and hold this higher aspiration grounded in our bodies as our vessels become spiritualized as conscious transducers of the divine force and divine will. During this process, we might find that there's no escape anymore. Old coping mechanisms no longer work like they used to. There's no place in the world that is safe from what is happening. Ultimately, the body connected to our true self and essence has to become our safe space. Inner work is imperative for anyone who doesn't want to get tumbled under the colossal universal forces of change. But there's also the necessity for conscious actions and resistance of these hostile forces as they stage their final desperate attempts for full takeover. The world is in a very fragile balance, and we haven't reached the dark night of civilization yet, which the mother Mira Alfazar referred to, which is pointing to the further disintegration of humanity. However, this dark night is not going to be helped by us getting into a fear frequency or negative doom and gloom paranoid state of mind, but it can act as a sober reality check for the direction we might be headed if things keep going the way they seem to be headed. This impending potential reality means that we cannot spiritually bypass our inner work and shadow any longer. Nor can we bypass looking clearly at the darkness in the world and doing what needs to be done to resist these azuric hostile forces that control the matrix. We are called to rise to the responsibility to engage in both inner and outer work, being and doing. If insufficient human beings wake up to the reality of how the anti-divine forces operate by actively resisting their influences, while also doing the necessary inner work to close all entry points within and to come in alignment with their essence and connection to the divine, we may experience what various ancient civilizations have experienced in past cycles, such as Atlantis, resulting in our full destruction and the divine pressing the reset button on our evolutionary journey. In order to avoid this mass cataclysmic destruction and the ultimate great reset, we need to reach critical mass, creating what is called the tipping point. But this resistance and activism needs to have a spiritual foundation and be in service to the divine, so we don't repeat the old mechanical way of past self-defeating revolutions. We need a complete shift in consciousness and not just another revolution. As Albert Einstein said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. The majority of the current state of activism on this planet is still based on the outdated human operating system of mental consciousness, externalizing everything, shadow projections, emotional reactivity, and lack of self-awareness and sincere self-work. It's important not to get caught up in the reactionary revolutionary mind without this spiritual foundation, or ultimately we end up distracted by the 3D shadows on the walls, projecting our own unresolved issues onto the world as we are being manipulated by occult forces pulling our strings. Sri Aurobindo hinted at this cataclysmic global destruction and the necessity to repeat the cycle if a significant part of humanity doesn't wake up and engage in spiritual activism in service to the divine. We see that possibility mirrored in other esoteric traditions, such as in esoteric Christianity, called the time of transition, or the Hopi prophecy, where there's a way up, there's a way down as well. The future is not set in stone. The divine will succeed eventually, here's the paradox, but it may take another 50, 100 years or another 1,000 years or longer if we must repeat the cycle, if we don't heed the voice of the divine and instead sink deeper into the dark night of civilization. Both possibilities exist right now in this fragile balance, and it's up to each one of us which direction it will go. The divine responds and acts in proportion to our own sincere collective and personal efforts. If we take full self-responsibility to learn our lessons, engage in the necessary inner work, which includes shadow work, addressing our core wounds, trauma healing, developing a spiritual practice, stilling the mind, and replacing our cultural and social conditioning with true knowledge, and prepare our bodies to receive the divine force, we increase our ability to anchor the divine consciousness onto this planet. We are asked to surrender to divine will, which is encouraging us to make this shift. For anyone who cannot embody the divine force that is descending onto this planet, they can easily become pawns to the dark agenda and fall deeper into confusion, ignorance, disembodiment, and suffering. The dark forces are currently better organized and more unified than the forces of light in humanity. Yet the azuric hostile forces are becoming desperate, and they are indeed starting to lose their power and control. But don't kid yourself, they won't give up that easily. This also doesn't imply getting into a savior or martyr state, an ego trap in itself, or the trap of asceticism, which means trying to escape the world or rejecting the material world. But it requires a deeper faith and trust in the divine with a constant aspiration towards becoming more defined embodiments of this higher force, while also rejecting the tendencies, desires, and attachments of the lower nature with all the matrix temptations. Various spiritual esoteric traditions have said that we must be willing to lose everything we have when referring to this process. All of this requires consistent practice, and for this, faith and trust are important. As for many of us, it will be a while before we truly can see or feel the divine presence that is always within and all around us, however much veiled by our own ignorance. But once we've had a glimpse of it, we realize that in losing everything we have, we gain the world. For this everything we lose is not about being poor or rejecting the material world as it has been misinterpreted and used for social control via corrupted religious and spiritual teachings. No. It is related to losing our false sense of self and the lies we've been living because of it, our masks and inauthenticity. And in the letting go, we find complete freedom in our true self. And in this process, we transform the world, for conscious, powerful action can only arise from the true self, not the reactive, conditioned, and wounded ego personality. To be reborn, we must learn how to die first. And as we die to the old world in our old conditioned self, the new one can be reborn, as this rebirth process happens both collectively and individually. Godspeed.